Well, hello, David, and look at you with your new single malt podcast backdrop. Welcome to the
Well,
podcast.
yeah, indeed, and maybe one day we'll have the same suit of clothes on, but it just shows you that we're not in some sort of phony studio somewhere. This is live as you see it.
Very good too. So today we've got another podcast talking about business and the locality we're in. And you were telling me before the show that you'd seen something on the BBC that concerned you, but also you thought was a great opportunity for local authorities.
Yeah, I think it's a magical opportunity, and there are lots of stories, aren't there, that more fortunes are often made while there's a recession. And a recession will clean out a lot of the, how can we put it, the hopefuls whose business should never have actually been started anyway. Um, but the thing that concerned me that you referred to was the fact that this coming year, thousands of people who started businesses pre the pandemic are now facing closure, and many are closing as we speak on a daily basis. And I think it's a combination of things. Obviously, I mean, there will be the ones that should never have started, but things like the lockdown that they kind of put their savings into, kept up their savings into, and now they're running out of those savings. They took on, business bounce back loans, and now they're coming to repayment time. They've got the energy costs. More and more people are looking for their own, household situation. So that's conspiring, and I think that it's a shame because a lot of businesses that are essentially viable in terms of their proposition and their market and the needs that they're serving are being compromised, and unfortunately might have to close. And then I thought about the local economy, how that would impact across the whole of the local economy. Now more people will be unemployed because of these business closures, and that's going to hit local authorities with a drop in business rates and a greater demand on benefits and so on. And then I thought, well, actually, local authorities with many of their commercial ventures are, we're kind of in it together now, aren't we?
Yeah, we are definitely much more so than several years ago. New ventures being tried, some successful, many local authorities, one not so, but facing the same issues with, rampant inflation, cost of goods and energy. I saw something today about the levelling up funding that councils have had may not have the same impact as, say, 2 years ago because the inflation has eaten into the benefits of that capital. And also, building a new swimming pool in an area that needs one is fine, but how are you going to run it? What are the revenue costs of running a new leisure centre? I mean, many leisure centres are under the cosh anyway, and they've existed tens of years, let alone a brand new one. So what's good in sort of economic development terms from the government isn't always good from an operational level. And so council businesses, well, we all need help in how to focus the right sort of effort into the right products, how to set your business strategy. And you're absolutely right. I mean, it's devastating a local economy that is losing really good entrepreneurial spirit, and high streets getting perhaps poorer. So the local authority has a sort of a corporate social responsibility, even if it hasn't got, a commercial interest in keeping those businesses at least going as long as possible. Not least they're paying business rates, which the council won't want to lose. So what were your ideas about what councils could do practically then?
Well, one of the things I was thinking about when I read the article is, hey, because local authority businesses are in the same position, um, it it behoves the council perhaps to sort of reach out to their business communities and say, look, if you're facing hard times, or if things are getting heading towards having to make a decision. Do I close? Do I not? Do I put some more of my savings and cash in my pensions and so on and so forth? Don't just sit there and why not come to us? Tell us, just in the first instance, just tell us that I'm in a hole, and then we could perhaps have a quick look of your business and maybe bring in some outside help to take a quick look of your business. If it's viable, then we can perhaps facilitate adding the missing dimensions to your business by helping you, in particular, those people who start a business on a kind of a vocational or a passion, but they're not expert business managers.
Yes, making
Perhaps
something in the shed that worked well in the shed, but didn't scale when it was into a factory, say.
Yeah, or someone who really likes cooking and is a chef. And I noticed in that article, that BBC article, that actually there was one lady who was a chef, and she dreamed all of her life about turning that skill and that passion into a business. But obviously, she doesn't have the business management skills. In the healthier economic times, she acquires those. Doing is learning. She makes a mistake, but doesn't make it twice. But now, when disaster's looming, in the coming weeks, then you haven't got time to do that. But maybe the local authority could sponsor some sort of collaboration with outside experts to actually help them through that. And as you know, I used to run a kind of boardroom groups where I would actually say quite honestly, do you know what? You haven't got a business. So you're running a business, but no wonder it's flatlining, because actually you haven't got a business and you haven't got a business. But if you put those two together and they are complementary, you might have something that people would invest in. And so it's that type of
so it's not only just sort of relaying some information, education, training, awareness, but it's also a networking opportunity for those businesses to find complementary or sometimes what look like opposing markets, that they could meet one another and go off and be better as a combination rather than a sole trading.
Absolutely. And I think that type of approach often generates all sorts of things, as you say, networking opportunities. This particular company has got a bloody good accountant, but whereas this one is, sort of just doing the operational side day after day, and has lost track of, whether they are insolvent or not. So those two could combine, complementary products and so on and so forth. And the other thing is that a council can honestly say, well, a lot of councils can honestly say, we're in the same boat. Yeah.
Definitely.
So we're not trying to cast.
We're not wagging fingers.
No wagging fingers allowed. Yeah, absolutely. And in many cases, some of the private sector turnarounds that could maybe be achieved could actually give some thoughts, some insights into local authority commercial ventures, which
it's just symbiotic. You were mentioning to me before we started of sort of a Venn diagram, which often isn't a Venn diagram. You have, the private sector, the public sector, and they're sort of eyeing each other up. It's better for you. No, it's better for you. But when you get sort of an occlusion of the two, sometimes you don't get a good mix. Sometimes there's sort of hard and fast lines drawn, and it's not always the same in both sectors, but you might get some complementarity. You might get councils, I think, possibly investing in small businesses locally if it's adding value to the offer to the locality, because the council's interest is the economic, social, and environmental well-being of their area.
Actually, that's not a bad thought, because a lot of local authorities in the past several years were investing in physical properties on the hope that it would give them an interest, give them a dividend interest. So whether it's a solar farm, whether it's a shopping centre, the other end of the country, a lot of authorities were looking at these physical properties, but right on their doorstep, right on their doorstep are virtual properties, if you like, which could be a business venture. So there's a property that you could invest in, and potentially with that sort of networking effect and that sort of reinventing effect, could actually see a much better return than 5 or 6% on a physical property. They could see it could be a loan note to the authority, that the authority considers putting forward, where the loan note pays a dividend, and then if the business is sold, then the local authority gets a second bonus, which is So I think if you look at the situation, that it's the local economy, and it's paying off by keeping businesses alive, business rates coming in,
Exactly.
no draw on or less draw on benefits, and then a dividend from what you're doing.
And the
I think it's
social,
magical.
yeah, and I mean, there's a lot talked about social value, which I often find hard to define, but it's those things around the place that make it feel good, and the well-being of the area rising, skills, security, safeguarding. If businesses are part of the fabric that make a local area good to be in,
Mm,
as well as the public realm and the good auspices of a good democratic local authority and parishes, or if they've got them, and other institutions, then this is helping to secure social value. There's a commercial interest, but also there's a wider interest, not least in getting a business rates, keeping some business rate coming in rather than, failure, but also the general social value increasing, the stock of the social value in the area improving, which I think is really goes to the heart of what the local authority is there for. But it can use its instruments, you say, you can use its purchasing power, its leverage of its own property to help businesses
mm,
perhaps occupy some of its dead space. It's actually the council businesses thinking, do you know what? Those small local companies are doing better than us. Perhaps we should get out of competing for them and actually join them and take a stake in it. Because that's often been a complaint about. I've heard members say, well, why are we starting a MOT business? Because that's just taking business away from the local economy. Well, not if my business is better than theirs, but I do accept that we've got to have additionality in the area. It's no good sort of halving what the pie to such a small portion each. We've got to try and grow the pie. As can you grow a pie? We've had that debate before. So I
mm.
think local authority is. I can hear people saying, well, can't afford to set up a kind of a boot camp for those businesses, but I think they can, because it's the opportunity benefit of not having business rate go down the pan, but it's also the feedback you'll get from your business community be almost priceless, that the local authority was worried about or concerned or cared about them enough. And I don't just mean the normal business meetings at budget time where the businesses say, oh, why is the taxes going up? It's this constant engagement with the business fraternity.
Well, I think also that if you got that sort of the economic well-being, the feel-good factor in a
Mm,
community, the sense of vibrancy,
mm,
all, not quite the blitz mentality, but everybody there, the local authority is in the same boat with its
yeah,
commercial enterprises.
yeah,
So, we're gonna make this happen,
yeah.
and that sort of profile means that businesses that are in adjacent areas are looking for new development opportunities in local authority. Which local authority is more attractive? The standoff
Exactly.
aloof authority that
Yeah.
just says, well, yeah,
Good
or
luck.
the authority that obviously is an enterprise authority
Mm,
and is driven by the way it goes about conducting its services, and
yes.
then applies the same rules to investment in other businesses, and then
Mm,
but expects it to be done on a basis of we will if you will. So the businesses pay a dividend on anything that the local authority helps them out
puts
with.
in.
It may be an interim loan for 3 or 4 months, just to get them through things.
Be
It
in
could
kind, I
be,
guess, if it's premises or something.
yeah.
Would it?
So I'm
Yeah, that's
for
a
it.
great
I'm for it.
idea.
I think this concept of the local authority, adopting this profile of the orchestration of,
Mm,
the commercial community and its own commercial ventures. And, we're all brands together. And
Yes,
yeah,
yes. If you were thinking of, I mean, if the council say put on I think you call them a boot camp or a kind of a scrum or whatever it is, just to get the people in the room. First of all, that's good that they can come and listen and learn. What, thinking of turnarounds, we've talked about this in the 180 group. Just give us a few hints at what that sort of boot camp day would look at. Would it look at what your proposition is, where your cash flow, those sort of hints of the practical side of it? Not a
well, the
whole
thing,
exhaustive thing, but just
no, no,
a
no,
few
no.
hints.
I think it's basically there to demonstrate to businesses, councils, businesses, or private sector businesses, and I'm certain that that the mixing in a boot camp of commercial, commercialization, and also
Mm,
the running of private sector business. I think that would be a healthy mix as well. But
yes.
basically, what you do is what we tend to do, what we've done in the past anyway, was to sort of break people into teams and groups. We
Mm,
first of all kick off what you need to know, what you need to be on top of to know where you are, because
mm,
if you don't know where you are and where you're headed,
mm.
you're just wandering about. Any road will take you there, type of thing. So the first thing is what do you need to be on top of? What are the KPIs of your business?
Mm.
How to make a profit and how to cut costs and so on and so forth. How can you make yourself more efficient and effective? And
Would
at the
you
same
cover
time,
even the terminology? Because business owners are interested in the great thing they can make in their shed and their greater, wedding dresses or whatever machines, but they wouldn't know what turnover was. What you look at Dragon's Den, people sweat when they don't know what their gross or net profit is and margin. Is it actually these basics of how businesses work?
yeah. I remember when British Steel went, and that shows my
Chinese steel now, isn't
yeah.
it?
So when British Steel was privatized, I forget the guy's name. It's a Scottish guy, American Scottish guy. He came along and said, "I've solved it." Within I think it was in
Wow,
12 hours. He said, "I've solved it."
he's
And the
good.
government said, "What? How have you done that? What do we do?" And he said, "Stop making steel." He basically said, "Stop
It's a,
making steel because
mm,
then you'll be in a less deep hole than you are at the
mm,
moment. Every ton of steel that you make, you're losing money on it. So
mm,
um, instantly, the impact on your bottom line would be dramatic if you stop making steel."
mm.
So, and I'm being flippant and what
Yeah,
have you, but what
it's
it
a
what it
big
shows
argument.
is that if
Mm,
you're not aware of how your business is functioning in terms of cash flow, in terms of, I mean, a lot of people actually just have a direct debit to the local authority for their
mm,
business rates, but
mm,
they don't time it with their cash flow. So
mm.
they find themselves in doo-doo because their direct debits are going out when
Mm.
at a time when their cash flow is weak. So
Sump is
now
dry. Yeah.
now what's happening is, although on paper that you are making enough sales and your margins are right, you haven't got on top of your cash flow. So you haven't managed your cash flow, and now you're dipping into your overdraft. And that's the most expensive form of business
Mm.
financing ever. So with just an awareness and a few tricks of the trade, then you can actually have a massive impact within, hours, literally,
Yeah.
of the viability of your business.
Mm.
Um, you can see that this particular product, because people tend to think of markup rather than margin. This,
Mm.
when you run the margin figures, then you find we're actually in an operational loss before we've even touched our overhead
Yes.
cost. So rather than try to fix that for the moment, drop those products, stop selling them. Yeah, the impact on your bottom line will be amazing. The impact on your cash flow will be amazing. So those are the sort of things that we do
Yeah.
in the beginning. Yeah.
How many, when you've done this before, in a room full of, I don't know, 30 businesses, how many bit of those entrepreneurs actually already knew some of that financial stuff or even the business? Is it shockingly low?
I think it's with the vocational business owners, the one, the chef that likes cooking and therefore
Yes.
starts a restaurant,
Yeah.
that is shocking in many cases, that they hadn't actually spotted that on this particular week of the month they're paying out everybody, nothing's
Mm,
coming in, and they're
mm,
dipping into their overdraft and just digging
mm,
their own grave. So in the vocational business owner, yes. Others probably are aware of the terminology, are aware of the common sense of doing
mm.
it, but they don't have the capacity to keep it as part of their daily life. They're too busy making yet another this, that, or the other.
Yes. But local authorities, let's say some of them have actually, run very close, and some actually are in the do as you call it, because although they've written very nice reports and they've had the governance all over them and the scrutiny, have, have made assumptions that were wildly optimistic or
Mm,
very rarely pessimistic, and in terms of interest rate predictions or returns on investment in property or even commercial interests. I've, run the problem of not realizing how to scale a small business and not actually having enough seed funding to move it to the next level. However, it was good in a small group, in small number of subscribers. It couldn't scale unless you put more money into it, and that needed more permissions and some rudimentary problems. So we're all, as you said before, whether you're council or private sector, there's a lot of learning to do, learning as you go on by mistakes. It's great to have the passion about your products. Let's face it, that's important. The chef must be passionate about his or her products, but it's very important to know more than just say, oh, your accountant's going to sort it out, any more than a council accountant. I mean, some public sector accountants are only trained in how to set council budgets. They're not there to run a trading account.
um, Interesting that you mention accountants. And I think there are accountants and there are accountants, and I know that's pretty obvious, but a lot of accountants, when you actually meet with them and you talk about this stuff, they're just there as record keepers in many cases. They use Xero or Sage or something like that and keep the
Mm,
books, but they're accountants in the strictest sense of the word. The
mm.
the old chartered accountant
Accounting.
that, yeah,
Yeah.
that basically keeps the books, keeps the records up to date, and at the end of the year does an audit and files your returns. On the way, an accountant is, apart from the exceptional few, so don't cast aspersions on everyone, but accountants isn't really any use to you in terms of business management. you
Mm,
can you can be certain that you could got access to numbers, but
mm,
which numbers do you access and how do you use that
mm,
information? How do you deploy it? How do you rebuild the plane in
mm,
flight, which
mm,
sometimes you have to do? That's
mm,
that's not the job of an accountant, unless one of the big four or big
mm,
10, where they've got all of that sort of general advisory capacities as well.
mm.
But your standard small business accountant is probably not the best. That's been honest.
I suppose also they'll say, well, we're not here to make decisions for the business owner. But what we're talking about here is creating an environment in which business owners can get a bit more clued up as to some of the mechanics of their business. So it's no
Yeah.
surprise when they run out of cash because, they're not paid on time by their suppliers, that they meet other people who are in a similar boat, which is always a good thing. They meet people that they might want to do business with or create a supply chain with, to complement, which is a lot of business clubs. I mean, we've started, haven't we, some business incubation type
Mm,
led by councils, but this is going further where beyond and starting with the kind of environment and the learning environment that we could perhaps invest in, it's actually possibly even creating a new breed of interplay between council and businesses where there's some
absolutely. Mm.
intellectual property investment, also some real investment and some
I
returns.
Yeah, and I think that accountants shouldn't do it on the basis of social responsibility, or I mean that for me, they are the sort of cream on the cake. But as with the sort of stewardess instructions on a plane.
Yeah.
Even with a child, put your own mask on first so that you can
Yes.
help the child.
Exactly.
And I think a council needs to be certain that this isn't just kind of profiling the council
Yes.
or
Yeah.
getting votes, or the council's at
Yeah.
least doing so. I think
No.
it has
Due
to be hard
diligence is
nosed.
absolutely critical, isn't it?
Yeah, it has to be hard nosed. So if you're giving an interim loan to a local business, you want your loan back and interest. And if you fail to make payments, then we're going to pull the facility. And the other thing is that there are ways that a council can limit its exposure by saying, well, we'll give you the loan for over the next 6 months. We will guarantee that we've given you the loan to your bank or what have you, so they don't close you down. But in the meantime, we're not going to give you it all up front. We're going to give you this loan as you need it over the next 6 months, and your behaviour will actually influence the. So I think there's got to be some discipline there. There's got to be some structure in there. I think that anything that a council expends should have a dividend coming back. But it's in its own interest, and it can learn lessons in its own commercial ventures from the private sector as well. So I actually think that is a radical, we're all in it together. We can help each other out. We can turn this around. If it's insolvent, let's just say it's insolvent, and probably it should never have been started in the first place.
And that can be said for a lot of local authority companies as well.
Yeah.
I think that really is a kind of great summary of your what you've seen in the paper and what our thoughts today. I think probably we've come to the end of that theme today. Do you, David?
Yeah,
I mean, should we clink glasses and sort of end the podcast there?
Yeah, we
haven't got good at endings.
One for the road. Yeah.
One for the road.
And
I think we could
off.
develop that one later, when perhaps if people comment on the podcast and maybe people have done this and give us their experience of what they've done, how it went.
Yeah, and you know what? If there's whether it's a business or a local authority, if they would like, a 5-minute one-to-one, maybe we could think about that as well.
I think that's a good idea.
But essentially, I just wanted to express my concern that there's really some good business stories out there that are going to disappear because no action was taken. And having worked with local authorities and been impressed by the competency there, with the right thinking and the right approach, then there's many local authority enterprises that should be successful, but sadly are not. Yeah,
I agree there. Well,
all right.
Great thoughts. Thanks, David. That was quite stimulating. I don't know, 25 minutes. It hasn't been too much longer than that. So we'll see our guests another time and with another topic.
And on that note, yeah. and on Burns Night, fare thee well.
On Burns Night, I'm virtually clinking a glass with you now in our single malt, guys. So see you on the road then.
Okay. Catch you soon. Bye.
Bye.